Final Fantasy VII Rebirth absolutely blew me away earlier this year, taking a massive leap beyond its predecessor. It introduced a fully explorable world map, packed with tons of minigames, a lot of minigames, delivered an overwhelming volume of content that outshines pretty much every other game released this year. The original game is revered as one of the greatest games of all time, and so much of the reason why that is packed into this last third, that will be Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. This series deserves the best finale possible. Today, we're diving into what it needs to do to create a lasting impact, just like the original game did, and become an absolutely unforgettable experience. Throughout this video, I'll be showing you the Drifting Series Final Fantasy VII Rebirth gaming chair from DXRacer, the sponsor of today's video. That's right, we're going to be building an FF7 chair while you listen to me talk about FF7. The quality of this chair is truly outstanding. I got the extra large size, and I gotta say, it is the most comfortable gaming chair I've ever owned. The design is simply stunning. Just look at this lower back pillow featuring Cloud's belt design. It's incredible. We'll dive deeper into its features throughout the video, and don't forget to use the discount code NIGHTSKY for an exclusive offer. Airships have been a long staple of the Final Fantasy series, representing freedom, exploration, and the spirit of adventure. However, in recent years, they've gradually disappeared from FF games, often being replaced by more convenient but less immersive fast travel systems. In Final Fantasy XV, we saw an attempt to bring back the airship with the Regalia Type F, but it fell short of capturing the magic of true airship exploration, and also the tremendous pain of having to land that thing. It ended up feeling like an afterthought more than a fully integrated feature. Airships are returning with Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3, and on top of this quote, Hamaguchi says the Highwind will play a major part in the third game in the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy. He says he can't say much, but the prototyping of the Highwind has reached quite a level now, and they have been able to create a new and special gameplay experience while traveling the world in the Highwind. He said he really wants to tell people what it is, but he can't, so please wait until they're able to reveal it. If I had to take a guess on what this feature is, I'd say airship battles with Shinra. Imagine navigating the Highwind while dodging enemy fire and launching your own attacks. This will not be the first Final Fantasy game to attempt this. Final Fantasy Type 0 also introduced airship battles. It was a really cool feature, and I think it's time that Final Fantasy VII Re Trilogy brings it back. This could elevate the gameplay to new heights, no pun intended, making the Highwind not just a mode of transportation, but a key component of the adventure that players will never forget. Reintroducing the Highwind in airship gameplay could reinvigorate the sense of exploration and adventure that is so core to what defined the original Final Fantasy VII, and this will allow them to do exactly that. Another thing is, expect lots of wide, flat spaces on the world map now. Quote, Tetsuya Nomura considers implementing an airship to be the single biggest obstacle posed by Part 3 of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project. He's worried about needing wide, flat surfaces to land such a giant aircraft, and fears this might limit how freely the vehicle can be used. Indeed, in the original PS1 game's graphics, just landing an airship anywhere made sense. But in very realistic graphics, not only can it look pretty silly to do, it can actually cause numerous other issues within an open world setting like this. Landing your airship anywhere can literally result in bugs, the player blocking themselves off from different locations and such, but also you just really need some type of space to even fit the airship in the first place, so that it's not just straight up blocking the whole level. It's going to be tough for the developers to fit this in, but airships absolutely should come back to Final Fantasy. I believe that if they're going to be a key feature though, they should be more than just transportation that's alternative to fast travel, but a key part of gameplay. And I think one way they can keep this really interesting is to have just a few unmarked objectives on the map, and they could only find these locations using the airship or on foot. This will help avoid the supposed checklist game design and give a real sense of exploring this world with not everything spelled out for you. Now let's take a look at assembling our Final Fantasy VII Rebirth chair. We'll start by opening the box. Chair features a sleek outline of the Buster Sword and a beautiful red text logo of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, with the inside of the seat featuring icons representing each character's weapons. It is stunning and minimalist in design, design. Start by fitting all the wheels into the base of the chair just by twisting them like this. Then slide the gas lift cylinder into the center of the chair and place the plastic cylinder cover on top. One of the most iconic and challenging aspects of the original Final Fantasy VII or the weapon fights. These massive kaiju monsters raise the sense of scale figuratively and quite literally. Reimagining these boss fights presents a unique opportunity and a significant challenge for the developers. First of all, implementing kaiju fights in general is a tremendous challenge. That being said, we've seen Square Enix's own creative studio 3 just recently have some pretty major success with this in the form of icon versus icon fights, which do successfully depict a sense of scale. A particularly complex challenge comes with the underwater battle against Emerald Weapon. In the original game, this fight took place deep beneath the ocean's surface, with Cloud and his team navigating the submarine to confront this massive creature. Translating this into realistic modern graphics raises a ton of questions. Will we see Cloud and Co. literally swimming while engaging in combat? Listen, I am Final Fantasy X build, so that sounds absolutely based to me. But given the complexities of underwater combat in a real-time action game setting, it seems kind of unlikely. Instead, this battle might be reimagined entirely, but I honestly can't really tell you what I think the specifics of it will be. But I can only foresee them doing something quite different with it. And it's not just the weapon fights. What about Knights of the Round? Consider how summons work in the Final Fantasy VII Re Trilogy for a second, where they fight alongside you. Now imagine rendering 13 knights with their models, animations, textures on screen all at once without your PS5 exploding and bursting into flames. And also just gameplay balancing something like that. I do not envy the developers on this one at all. However they choose to approach it, these things are key components of what makes Final Fantasy VII. They must retain their identity as some of the most challenging and memorable encounters in the game. Whether on land or underwater, the scale and intensities of these battles needs to be properly conveyed in a way that captures the essence of what made them so unforgettable in the original, and truly exceed player expectations. Now for the next step in assembling our chair. Start by removing these screws on the sides of the chair. Then align the backrest with the seat so that the metal brackets on the backrest fit into the corresponding slots on the seat. Once aligned, insert metal brackets into the slots, making sure the screw holes are properly matched on both sides. Next, use the provided screws to securely attach the backrest to the seat on both the left and right sides. After tightening the screws, then place the left and right covers over the screws to give the chair a clean finished look. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth elevated the series' combat to its highest point, blending real-time action with strategic elements. Re Trilogy honestly might be the most praised battle system in the FF series, period. As we look forward to part 3, the challenge will be to maintain the momentum while seamlessly integrating new characters like Cid and Vincent. Each character brings their own unique abilities and playstyle, and I can't wait to check out their full kits. There is only one tiny little problem, and that is that there is already a lot going on with this game mechanically, both inside and outside of battles. They were, however, mindful of this in Rebirth and did some things like streamlining weapon growth to make room for folios. But it's hard to imagine even more systems being introduced on top of the already existing ones. The presence of synergy alone already added another huge layer to combat. Ultimately, I wouldn't just want them to add on mechanics if they ended up feeling bloated. But one of the key additions that could enhance combat in part 3 is the ability to actively swap party members during battle, much like Final Fantasy X. In FF10, you could swap characters out of battle at any time during their turn. In Rebirth, all party members, even inactive ones, currently stay on the field when in battle. It would then seem like the next logical evolution would be for you to be able to tag those party members in and out of that battle. This would allow for more dynamic and strategic gameplay, letting players switch between characters on the fly to exploit enemy weaknesses or adapt to the flow of combat. It would also mean that you could spend less time fiddling with materia between characters, as you could just switch them in and out of the party. Too many times do I encounter an enemy and think about how a different party configuration would be better for this fight. With Final Fantasy X style character switching, it only served to make the combat in this game that much more versatile. It also alleviates some of the inconvenience in the current system, and definitely something I am desperately hoping for in the next game. Though speaking of materia, there's a lot of time in Rebirth spent just fiddling around with the materia of each character. It would definitely be nice if we can get some proper materia loadouts in this game, allowing us to have presets that we can just apply to each character without having to fiddle around with everything every time. While on the subject of combat, I think it'd be good if there was just a hard mode straight out of the gate. While I loved hard mode in Remake as a 40-hour game, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is a game that is 1 trillion hours long, and I think that's an underestimate of it. The dynamic mode was really good and honestly a great first step, but I think that it would be good if there was a hard mode that you can access straight out of the gate. I do, however, love New Game Plus hard modes as well, so if they added an additional harder mode that was available after you beat the game, that would be the perfect optimal solution. Now for the next step in completing our chair. In this step, remove these 4 screws at the bottom of the seat, then line the mechanisms holes up with the ones on the chair. Insert the 4 washer-headed bolts into the corresponding holes, ensuring that they are securely fastened to hold the mechanism in place. We are so close to finishing this chair. The side content in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was a massive step up from the side content in contemporary FF games. There were plenty of mini-games, collectibles in the world to discover, and overall an absolute ton of content. So much so that many players are a bit overwhelmed with things to do. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. That being said, I don't think that the next game has the pressure of going that hard on side content. However, if anything is a must return, it's Queen's Blood. Unfortunately, this has been confirmed in a recent interview with the devs. This should come as no surprise, as this minigame was super popular. This being said, the developers want to make an even better version of Queen's Blood for the next game. While this excites me, I hope whatever twist they're thinking about adding ends up being a good one. I love Triple Triad in its base form, but then when you start adding all the additional rules, it's just not as fun. And I don't want that to happen to Queen's Blood. It just makes me nervous, because how do you improve upon perfection? Now for one of the most crucial steps in assembling the chair, carefully turn the chair upright and align the bottom of the seat with the gas lift. Lower the seat onto the gas lift and ensure that it fits securely into the mechanism, ensuring a stable, secure connection between the seat and the base. Guys, it's all come together. We have a thing that you can sit on now. But there is one more crucial step. There's a lot going on in the Final Fantasy VII Re trilogy story-wise, and they have a ton of ground to cover. The war with Wutai. This was more of a background element in the original game, but in this game, it is going to be something major. A conflict with far-reaching implications, not only for the characters, but the entire world. This suggests to me that Wutai will be depicted at greater scale than ever before. Not to mention other locations such as Icicle Inn, the Northern Crater, and the Deal. But I think one of the biggest questions I have is what are they going to do with the existing locations? Sure, alongside locations like Wutai, we'll be getting brand new regions to explore. However, with the Highwind and the ability to explore the entire world map, I'm expecting a ton of new side content to pop up at these previous locations. Not to mention that we'll also be revisiting Midgar. When you really think about it, the scope of Part 3 is going to be so utterly insane. Thus far, they haven't cut any location, although there is some doubt on whether or not Rocket Town will make it into the game. There's a lot of ground to cover, not just literally, but also metaphorically. There's going to be scenes such as the livestream sequence, which is arguably the most important scene in all of Final Fantasy VII, as it's the moment where Cloud restores his true self, reconciling the fragmented pieces of his identity. Something absolutely pivotal for Cloud's character development and the overall narrative. They did this thing in Rebirth where they recorded all of Red 13's voice as Red 13 and all of his voice as well as Nanaki. In case you did the side quest out of order, it would always reflect where he was at that point in the story. This was an incredible feature, and I was blown away that they did this. What I think would also be cool for this third game is if they did the exact same thing for Cloud. Cloud should have different voice lines before and after this scene. Cloud's newfound clarity should come through his voice, with a stronger, more assured tone, one that really conveys the growth that he went through and the resolution of his inner turmoil. This is something I feel will leave a lasting impact on players. But there's an even bigger thing that is looming over all of this, and that is whatever is actually going on in this game. Many theorize that this game isn't just a remake, but also a sequel to the original Final Fantasy VII. There is a lot of contention on whether or not this story has a multiverse of sorts. It is really easy to add conjecture here, and my goal isn't to do that, today anyways, but instead to focus on, at the very least, there appear to be multiple layers of reality in some sort of way. way. Call them worlds, call them dreams, whatever you want to call them, they're a massive part of the narrative, and they have to conclude in a meaningful and satisfying way on top of everything else that is going on. But this journey has a wild card to it, a thing that can make or break everything. The most important part of this entire series. Oh, you already know what it is. But first, let's finish up the chair. Go ahead and attach the headrest pillow to the top of the chair. You'll see these little pegs on the side, and essentially you just want to pull the strap back and pull it into the pegs. You can adjust the pillow to your preferred height for optimal support. Then simply place your back support pillow and you are done. You've completed our DXRacer Drifting Series Final Fantasy VII Rebirth gaming chair. Of course, the biggest mystery of all is Zack. Both Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth have teased that his story is leading into something of great importance, yet we don't know exactly what that is yet. He was seemingly resurrected, although there's a lot of conjecture about this. Some people deny the claim that he is still alive. Maybe he is just one of the unsent that Yuna forgot about. Ladies and gentlemen, this man doesn't even know he's dead. Rebirth even doubled down on him even further, making him a playable character, but his role is still unclear. What are they actually going to do with Zack that will ultimately be of the utmost consequence? The developers have said they won't make any significant changes to the core story of Final Fantasy VII. That depends on how you define change and core story. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth itself wasn't without deviation, but it was a surprisingly faithful game. However, both Remake and Rebirth have layered a lot of twists in between them, and they could definitely end up leading to a brand new conclusion. I suspect that most of the third game will be the same, a mostly faithful and expanded version of events. However, it's also likely to have another thing in common with these two games, and that is an ending that is quite different than what we saw in the original game. Though the purpose of the previous two games' endings was to really give a sense of mystery. However, this third game is the finale, and hopefully all these twists will no longer be mysteries. We will have finite answers. I hope, and I want all these things, all these mysteries to be tied together and to give us a satisfying conclusion that goes above and beyond the original game. And speaking of going beyond, guys, be sure to check out DXRacer with a link in the description below. This chair is by far the most comfortable gaming chair I've ever owned, most comfortable one I've ever sat in. And the quality just blows me away, even down to the smaller details like the cool gel foam headrest. It's just really nice. Not to mention the gorgeous Final Fantasy VII Rebirth design. This is something that you are going to want, and honestly is one of the nicest Final Fantasy things that I currently own. So be sure to check that link in the description below and use coupon code NIGHTSKY for a special offer. And I will see you all in the next video. Later, guys.